Hello, BookTube, and welcome to Epic Comic Book Wednesday. This is the world's finest collaboration between Michael K Vaughan and myself, where we discuss comic books every Wednesday for the three of you who watch. And Mike gets to pick what we talk about. And he picked an odd choice today, but one that I really ended up finding interesting. Can't say that I 100% enjoyed it, but I did find it interesting because it's not a superhero comic. It's this. It's Star Trek Voyager: Homecoming. It's a comic book adaptation of a 25-year-old Star Trek series from TV. Which is pretty interesting right there. Make you wonder what the dramatic potential of this could be. Star Trek Voyager, as those of you who will know if you've watched all of my Book Trek videos, it was an iteration of the Roddenberry era of the show where the USS Voyager, a Federation starship, is caught by an artifact of incredible alien technology and flung to the other side of the Milky Way galaxy. 80,000 light years from the Federation. In an instant. And is therefore faced with two seemingly conflicting directives. One is that Voyager's mission is technically unimpeded, which is to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before. They are an investigatory vessel. But the other mission, of course, since they're living beings, is to get home. So they set a course for home, and of course, even at maximum warp, unimpeded for days and days forever, which of course the ship can't do. Even at maximum warp in a straight line, which again they can't do, it would be 70 or 80 years before they got home. Virtually everyone on board would be dead. And they know that. They know that absent an incredibly lucky break, this is going to be a pointless voyage for most of them, if the point is to get back home. And that was the premise of Voyager TV show, was that they were in a totally unknown part of the galaxy, subject to all sorts of creatures and alien races that aren't familiar. That, a normal Star Trek show set in the Federation and in, the Alpha Quadrant, everything will be more or less familiar. You know who the Klingons are. You know who the Romulans are. And every Federation starship captain also knows that they're a phone call away from help, usually. In the original series, Kirk and his crew could be far away from Starfleet help. But ordinarily in Star Trek, no. But all of a sudden, all that is different. Captain Catherine Janeway, the commander of Voyager, is in a totally alien world, needing to make her way back home, but not knowing at all who to trust, and having no superstructure to rely on. And that was the premise of the show. And Voyager has a split. It has split the Star Trek fandom. Some people hate it, either because that's a kind of a plastic monster of the week type premise, or because of one specific character, a character named Neelix. Some people hate it. I loved it right from the beginning. I thought that it was, even more so than Star Trek The Next Generation, I thought that it was a Star Trek show that really put a lot of intentional care into its core cast of characters to make their very essence fraught with conflict. Now, Voyager didn't always pay off that conflict, but it did a lot more, I think, than any other original Star Trek show along those lines. And it also had Kate Mulgrew as Catherine Janeway, and that was a pure joy for me. Every week, that was a pure joy for me. But we got a Vulcan character. Mr. Spock from the original series, of course, is only half Vulcan. We got an actual Vulcan character and got to see what that would be like. The Doctor on board Voyager is a hologram. The flesh and blood Doctor was killed when the ship was transported across the galaxy, so they used the hologram in sickbay as the Doctor. That's an interesting concept right there. And so on and so forth, down the line. And week by week, Voyager had all sorts of adventures and developed a narrative through line, because the one thing we knew about the Delta Quadrant, where Voyager is flung, is that it's the home of the Borg. So eventually you get the writers leaned more and more into that. But in the back of everybody's mind who was watching Voyager, there was one plot, one story that they were hoping they were going to see. And when Voyager kept getting renewed, when it was obvious that Voyager was going to make it to a full 7 seasons, fans started to expect that. They started to rub their hands together and expect the one storyline they knew would happen, which is, does Voyager make it home? Does Voyager actually make it home? And I don't need to worry about spoiling a Star Trek series that's been off the air for 25 years, but Voyager does make it home. In the final episode, they make it home. It's an ending that is directly entwined with the Borg, in which a future Captain Janeway comes back in time to help her younger counterpart get the ship and crew home by defeating the Borg. And the moment at the end of that episode where Voyager actually does reach Earth is wonderfully underplayed. There's nothing grandiose. It's wonderfully stunned. Even Janeway is stunned that it actually worked, that this is actually real, that they actually made it. Kate Mulgrew had a number of ways open to her to act in the final moments of that final episode. She had a number of ways open to her to act, and I doubt very much that any showrunner would have told her no if she had chosen something less successful, some less intelligent way to do it. Instead, it's perfectly understated. The crew is stunned. They're not jumping up and down and cheering. They're stunned. They've actually managed to make it work after a lot of hardship. And that was the final episode and the final moment of the show. The most we see later are bits and pieces of other characters elsewhere. Admiral Janeway, of course, she would be instantly promoted, shows up in Star Trek The Next Generation movie, for instance. But we learn precious little of the aftermath here. The closest that we come are a couple of Voyager episodes that show the future. But we don't know that it's the right future, and actually we don't know that that's true here either. We don't know that future Janeway in the final episode of Voyager is from this timeline. So the one thing that Voyager fans don't get is wondering, well, what happens then? What happens once Voyager gets home? Voyager comes back to Earth while Earth and the Alpha Quadrant are still picking up the pieces from the Dominion War. Millions dead. When all of a sudden this storied starship that everyone thought was lost suddenly reappears while destroying a Borg vessel. So in addition to the hoopla of Voyager just making it back just alive and intact, there must also have been legendary hoopla over the fact that this is surely a sign that times are looking up. It's easy to imagine from the timeline and from the events of that final Voyager episode that the Voyager crew would have been extremely celebrated. They would have become legends in their own lifetime. It wouldn't have taken a long time for it to happen the way it did with the original series. They would have become legends instantly. They would all, to quote from Deep Impact, they would all have high schools named after them. And we don't get that. We don't get that, except in the books. The Voyager novels have gone on at great length about what happens to Voyager after they get home. But this is a comic book doing that. And it has, first of all, this cover, which would work perfectly well as a movie poster, but it doesn't work as a comic book cover. It's a static, boring comic book cover. That's the problem with adapting Star Trek to comic books, and it's dogged every adaptation that's ever happened, which is that Star Trek, when you think about what you're watching, and if, like me, you love these episodes, and you think of what you're loving an hour of people standing around talking, which is not a comic book thing at all. This is written by Susan Bridges and Tilly Bridges. I'm going to refer to them as Susan and Tilly Bridges specifically so that I can subsume the identity of Tilly Bridges into Susan Bridges' name. That's why I'm doing it, to patriarchally subsume her identity into the identity of Susan Bridges. That's why I'm not going to say Susan Bridges and Tilly Bridges throughout. That's why they listed them separately, because I'm a sexist pig. I'm surprised the credits don't actually mention me by name. Utterly ridiculous. This fascist control over language is utterly ridiculous. So, Susan and Tilly Bridges. One corporate entity. Tilly Bridges does not have an identity of her own. I am subsuming her into Susan Bridges. They're the ones who wrote this. And the artist is Angel Hernandez. does a very good job with what you can do. I mean, what can you do? Uh, it's a good looking thing. This is the opening panel. I really don't think that Voyager has the serial number on the bottom of the nacelles. I don't think that's canon. And also the lighting is wrong. If Earth looks like that, then that shadow is not going to be there. But that's all right. The Voyager doesn't look right at any point in the comic. And I should point out here at the beginning, not to bury the lead, that the plot line of this issue makes no sense at all. It's a dumb plot line. So Susan and Tilly Bridges needed to work a little harder on the plot line. But Voyager is back. Captain Janeway she recounts in the opening pages how they were lost in the Alpha Quadrant and a little bit of what happened to them there. We get a flashback page of some of the highlights and lowlights of Voyager. There is Catherine Janeway as the Spider Queen Chaotica in a rather interesting episode. There is the holographic doctor falling in love with a flesh and blood woman, a patient of his. There is the Tuvix, one of the episodes of Star Trek Voyager it's an ethical dilemma episode, and it still splits the fandom as to what was the right and wrong thing to do in that episode. We've got the Borg Queen, of course, and we also have, very interestingly, this is only going to make sense to you Voyager fans, we have a visual callback to not only the worst episode of Voyager, but what is widely recognized as the worst episode of Star Trek ever made. Is that right there, believe it or not. Believe it or not. I know those of you who don't follow Voyager will not believe this, but Captain Janeway is in that picture. But anyway, Janeway recaps all of that in the context of them getting a high-profile delegation visiting the ship. A whole bunch of admirals show up to relieve Janeway of her command, to relieve her and take control of the vessel. And we get that moment, and it's a heartbreaking moment. In an actual Voyager episode, it would be, you can imagine how marvelously it would be done, where Admiral Paris says, I relieve you, Captain, and Janeway says, I stand relieved. But here in a comic book, there's not much that can be done. It's pretty static. Janeway is no sooner relaxed than she realizes that Voyager is moving. And that there's something odd about the delegation of admirals that have come on board. They're acting strange. 3 of them take command of the vessel and are moving it, but the other one is Admiral Paris, who is the father of one of the crew members of Voyager. And here we see him bear-hugging his son. And here you get some limitations of what you're going to do with the artwork here, because the son, Tom Paris, in that panel is 12 years old, and the man is 7 feet tall and doesn't look like the actor who plays Admiral Paris in the show. Now, I've always said, when it comes to TV adaptation, stuff like this, the key to success is broad caricature signifiers, not photographic resemblance to the actors. I am firmly of the opinion that these are roles. These are roles, not people. I know that I'm asking for trouble because, of course, the roles of Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and Uhura or whatnot are being recast by other people. And I wouldn't object to that, except they're being recast along ideologically captured lines. So I'm not going to get what I want with that recasting, and I'm going to see eventually a recasting of Voyager. Ordinarily, I would applaud that. Before our ideologically driven age, I would have applauded that, because these are actors playing roles. So the actress, Kate Mulgrew, might give us an idea in rough terms of what Catherine Janeway looks like, but only rough terms. So as an artist, you should go with that. And they don't. The artist here doesn't. Hernandez doesn't do that. Instead, the artist tries as well as possible to make the characters look like the actors. And that never really works. You have to have, as an artist, you have to have not only your ability as a comic book artist, but also skill as a caricaturist to do that. And most artists don't have both of those. They decide that something suspicious is going on, and the doctor works his way into getting blood samples from the admirals, and it turns out that they are an alien species, a dire enemy of the Borg. Even though they are a dire enemy of this, an alien species we saw, they were introduced on Star Trek Voyager. Even though that's true, 7 of 9, who is a member of Janeway's crew and is a reclaimed Borg drone, has almost no part to play. I think she has 2 lines in this whole issue. I'm sure that she will be more prominent in later issues in this story arc, because it turns out that this species has infiltrated Starfleet in order to attack Voyager. Like I said, the plot line here doesn't make any sense. The more you think about it, the less sense it makes. But the overall idea here is that Voyager does make it home, but they are straight into trouble. They have landed straight into trouble, and the crew has to stick together and keep fighting. They don't have the happy homecoming that they want. So, in terms of a first issue, was this good enough to want to keep going? I did want to keep going. It's an odd choice for Mike. I'm surprised that it even crossed his radar. I don't think that he's a big... I haven't watched his video yet, but I don't think he's a big Voyager fan. I've never got that impression. So why he would gravitate towards this, I don't know. But it was very interesting. I saw it on the list of forthcoming comics. I guess I must have seen it and just blown right by it for this week. But I may ask my surly houseboy to get issue number 2. I may. Or maybe not. Maybe I'll download issue number 2. I downloaded issue number 1. It was as easy as it could be. So anyway, that is your Epic Comic Book Wednesday. It's Voyager Homecoming number 1. Very interesting experience. And a confirmation to me that not only is Voyager's story over. That's point number 1. Is that let's face it, we were interested in... Voyager's story was its time in exile. Its time wandering in the wilderness. After that, we may be interested in the characters, but it's not Voyager anymore. There's no sense that this crew is going to stay together on Voyager. So you might be interested in those characters, but you'll have to follow them in other storylines. That's problem number 1. And problem number 2 is adapting a TV show in which characters stand around talking into a comic book. You're going to run into trouble. I've almost never seen it done well. So, and it's not done particularly well here. So, but anyway, that's it for your Epic Comic Book Wednesday. We will move on next time. Something else Mike's choosing, so we'll see what he picks, and I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.